Imagine you're the owner of a small software development firm and you want to scale your business up. However, a small team size, the unpredictability of demand, and limited resources are roadblocks for this expansion. That's when you hear about cloud computing. But before investing money into it, you decide to draw up the differences between on-premise and cloud-based computing to make a better decision. When it comes to scalability, you pay more for an on-premise setup and get lesser options too. Once you've scaled up, it is difficult to scale down and often leads to heavy losses in terms of infrastructure and maintenance costs. Cloud computing, on the other hand, allows you to pay only for how much you use, with much easier and faster provisions for scaling up or down. Next, let's talk about server storage. On-premise systems need a lot of space for their servers, notwithstanding the power and maintenance hassles that come with them. On the other hand, cloud computing solutions are offered by cloud service providers who manage and maintain the servers, saving you both money and space. Then we have data security. On-premise systems offer less data security, thanks to a complicated combination of physical and traditional IT security measures, whereas cloud computing systems offer much better security and lets you avoid having to constantly monitor and manage security protocols. In the event that a data loss does occur, the chance for data recovery with on-premise setups are very small. In contrast, cloud computing systems have robust disaster recovery measures in place to ensure faster and easier data recovery. Finally, we have maintenance. On-premises systems also require additional teams for hardware and software maintenance, loading up the costs by a considerable degree. Cloud computing systems, on the other hand, are maintained by the cloud service providers, reducing your costs and resource allocation substantially. So now, thinking that cloud computing is a better option, you decide to take a closer look at what exactly cloud computing is. Cloud computing refers to the delivery of on-demand computing services over the internet on a pay-as-you-go basis. In simpler words, rather than managing files and services on a local storage device, you'll be doing the same over the internet in a cost-efficient manner. Cloud computing has two types of models: deployment model and service model. There are three types of deployment models: public, private, and hybrid cloud. Imagine you're traveling to work. You've got three options to choose from. 1. You have buses, which represent public clouds. In this case, the cloud infrastructure is available to the public over the internet. These are owned by cloud service providers. 2. Then you have the option of using your own car. This represents the private cloud. With the private cloud, the cloud infrastructure is exclusively operated by a single organization. This can be managed by the organization or a third party. And finally, you have the option to hail a cab. This represents the hybrid cloud. A hybrid cloud is a combination of the functionalities of both public and private clouds. Next, let's have a look at the service models. There are three major service models available: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Compared to on-premise models, where you'll need to manage and maintain every component, including applications, data, virtualization, and middleware, cloud computing service models are hassle-free. IaaS refers to infrastructure as a service. It is a cloud service model where users get access to basic computing infrastructure. They are commonly used by IT administrators. If your organization requires resources like storage or virtual machines, IaaS is the model for you. You'll only have to manage the data, runtime, middleware, applications, and the OS, while the rest is handled by the cloud providers. Next, we have PaaS. PaaS, or Platform as a Service, provides cloud platforms and runtime environments for developing, testing, and managing applications. This service model enables users to deploy applications without the need to acquire, manage, and maintain the related architecture. If your organization is in need of a platform for creating software applications, PaaS is the model for you. PaaS only requires you to handle the applications and the data. The rest of the components like runtime, middleware, operating systems, servers, storage, and others are handled by the cloud service providers. And finally, we have SaaS. SaaS, or Software as a Service, involves cloud services for hosting and managing your software applications. Software and hardware requirements are satisfied by the vendors, so you don't have to manage any of those aspects of the solution. If you'd rather not worry about the hassles of owning any IT equipment, the SaaS model would be the one to go with. With SaaS, the cloud service provider handles all components of the solution required by the organization. Time for a quiz now. In which of the following deployment models are you, as the business, responsible for the application, data, and operating system? 1. IaaS. 2. PaaS. 3. SaaS. 4. IaaS and PaaS. Let us know your answer in the comment section below.
In this session, we learn about Google Cloud Platform, wherein we will learn about what is cloud computing, why Google Cloud Platform, what is GCP, that is Google Cloud Platform, Google Cloud Platform domains, about a use case, that is Ferrero use case, and also a quick demo on using services from Google Cloud Platform. So when we talk about Google Cloud Platform, we also need to know what is cloud computing. So cloud computing is the use of hardware and software components to deliver a service to a network. Users can access these files and applications and services provided by a cloud provider from any device that has access to internet. In short, cloud computing is a way where cloud provider provides access to different services such as resources. And when we talk about resources here, we talk about computing, we talk about memory, we talk about processing power, we talk about storage, and we also talk about different services which cloud providers make available for the users. Now that allows us for automatic software integration, backup and restoring data, unlimited storage capacity, having a reliable use of different services, and having a cost-efficient solution. Now, we know that cloud computing's models, there are different service models. So you have platform as a service, you have infrastructure as a service, and you have software as a service. And these are the prominent models which are offered by different cloud providers such as Google Cloud, such as Google, you have Amazon, you have Azure, and also some organizations build their own private clouds using open source OpenStack. Let's focus more on Google Cloud Platform and what it has to offer and how it is gaining popularity in the market with different organizations which would want to work on a cloud platform or which would want to work on an infrastructure which is modernized. So when we talk about cloud computing, this is one of the approach which organizations can take to instantaneously benefit from modernization using different services, different platforms, and also newer technologies for their various requirements such as scalability or dynamic businesses. Before we get into Google Cloud Platform, it is also good to understand where you can find some useful resources about Google Cloud Platform. And here you have a website which is from your Google Cloud. So this is cloudacademy.com/library/Google. And here you can create a free account. Now that would give you just 7 days trial, but that has a lot of videos which talk about your Google Cloud Platform and essentials, and it has various certification related videos which you can access. And then after 7 days after you have tried, you can obviously go for a paid account where you can take detailed learning from here. Now this is your training library which shows your different cloud providers such as Amazon, Microsoft Azure, GCP, and then you have various other topics which are specifics to organization. You can obviously look at the pricing, and you can also look at resources which will give you a good experience in learning from these videos. You can also create a free account, which I will walk you through later. So you can create a free account on cloud.google.com. Now, when I say free account, that basically means it allows you to create an account, and every user who creates an account gets a $300 free credit, which can be used to practice, brush up your skills, and also explore and learn about different Google Cloud products which are offered by Google. Now, coming back to our Google Cloud Platform, let's understand why Google Cloud Platform. So Google Cloud Platform is popular for many reasons. Now let us see few of most important reasons why it stands out. When you talk about pricing, pricing is one of the significant factors that make Google Cloud stand out among the other cloud providers. It offers a monthly pricing plan, which is billed according to monthly usage. And when we talk about billing here, the billing can be in hours, it can be in minutes, and it can also be in seconds. There are different options when you talk about your pricing, which can be found from your Google Cloud webpage. Now, pricing could be based on preemptive machines. Pricing could be based on reserved instances or reserved resources. I'll show you the link where you can find more details on pricing part of it. So Google Cloud really has various pricing options which help customers in their different requirements, whether they would go for any of the service models such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or even software as a service. One more attractive thing about Google Cloud pricing is that it provides committed use discounts. For example, under this scheme, you can purchase a specific amount of virtual CPU cores and memory for up to 57% discount off regular prices if you commit usage for either 1 or 3 years. Now, this is just one option. There are various such options which you can learn about from the Google Cloud's page, and that really suits different customers for their different requirements. Now, when we talk about speed, we don't need to really challenge this aspect when it comes to Google services. So Google provides its Google Cloud and Google App customer speed up to 10 terabytes because of its faster cable system. There are different kind of machines which can be used if you're talking about computation, if you're talking about memory hungry applications, or even storage intensive workloads. All in all, speed is one of the defining characteristics of Google Cloud services. The cable has connections over US West Coast, main cities in Japan, and even major hubs in Asia. This speed enhances performances and leads to customer satisfaction. Now, when we talk about customers, any or every customer would prefer to have low latency, high throughput based services. They would want to use higher speeds to process their data in as less time as possible. Google provides a low latency network infrastructure. In fact, you can say that when you are using Google Cloud services, you are using the services from the same infrastructure which Google uses for its popular services such as Google Search or even YouTube, which is one of the second largest repository which can be accessed for videos. Now, when we talk about big data is data which is very complex, has a lot of other characteristics such as your volume, you have velocity, you have variety, you have veracity, validity, volatility, virality, and so on. So if an organization is working on big data, Google Cloud can be a better choice because Google has many innovative tools for cloud warehousing, for example, such as BigQuery, and even real-time data processing tools such as Dataflow. BigQuery is a data warehouse that allows massive processing of data at high speeds, basically working on your structured data. Google also has launched some new machine learning from artificial intelligence tools. Now, there are various other services which we can use from Google Cloud Platform. But let's understand what is Google Cloud Platform and what are some of the services. Even the services which are not listed here can be found in your console from Google Cloud. So what is Google Cloud Platform? GCP. It is a set of cloud computing services provided by Google that runs on the same infrastructure, as I mentioned, that Google uses for its end user products like YouTube, Gmail, and even Google Search. The various set of services offered by Google Cloud Platform are, so you have services which are specific to computing requirements. And again, in computing, you have various different options available. You have machines which are compute optimized, machines which are memory optimized, machines which are storage optimized, and also we have certain machines such as preemptive, which basically means that you could get a machine to work on at a far lesser price than any other machine. But when we talk about preemptive, these are the machines which can be requested on demand and they can be taken back by Google at any time. You have networking related services, which can be very useful when you are setting up your applications or your services across globe. You also have different services which are specific to machine learning, and organizations which would be interested in working on machine learning or artificial intelligence would be really interested in using these services. There are also innovative solutions to work on big data and big data related technologies. Now, when we talk about Google Cloud Platform domains, so we can break down these services into specifics, such as you have compute. Now, the compute service allows for computing and hosting the cloud. Now, when you talk about computing, here there are different services such as App Engine, you have Compute Engine, you have Kubernetes, you have Cloud Functions, and Cloud Run. When you talk about storage and database, so the storage and database service allows application to store media files, backups, or other file-like objects. Now, various services under this are as follows. You have cloud storage, Cloud SQL, Cloud Bigtable for unstructured data. You have Cloud Spanner, Cloud Data Store, Persistent Disks, and Cloud Memory Store. When we talk about networking, the networking service allows us to load balance traffic across resources. Now, as I mentioned earlier, resources could be your different resources which you would be using from a cloud platform, such as your devices, your instances, memory optimized or CPU optimized instances, or other resources, creating DNS records, and much more. So various services under this are VPC, that stands for Virtual Private Cloud. You have Cloud Load Balancing, Cloud Armor, Cloud CDN. You have Cloud Interconnect, DNS, and Network Service Tiers. When we talk about the Big Data Service, this allows us to process and query big data in cloud. Now, various services under these are as follows. You have BigQuery, Cloud, Cloud Data Proc, Cloud Composer, Cloud Data Lab, Cloud Data Prep, Cloud PubSub, which is publish and subscribing system. You have Cloud Data Studio. Now, you also have the developer tools, and developer tools service includes tools related to development of an application. Now, various services under these are as follows. That is, you have Cloud SDK, Software Development Kit, you have Deployment Manager, Cloud Source Repositories, and Cloud Test Lab. When we talk about identity and security, which is one of the primary concerns for any organization or any user who would be interested in using a cloud platform, Google Cloud really has taken care of this. So when you talk about identity and security domain, this deals with security services. Now, various services here are Cloud Identity. You have Identity and Access Management, that is Cloud IAM. You have Identity Aware Proxies. You have Cloud Data Loss Prevention API, Security Key Enforcement, Key Management Service, and many more. You also have cloud services which are related to Internet of Things. So very much would be used by organizations who would be working on IoT devices or the data generated by these devices. So various services here are Cloud IoT Core, you have Edge TPU, and Cloud IoT. Also, when we talk about cloud AI, that is artificial intelligence, this comprises of services related to machine learning and much more. So you have Cloud Auto ML, Cloud TPU, Cloud Machine Learning Engine, Job Discovery, Dialogflow Enterprise, Natural Language Cloud, Text to Speech, and much more. If you would be interested in services related to API platform, then there are different services under this category or this domain. So you have Maps platform, You have APG, API platform, monetization, developer portal, analytics, that is API analytics, APG Sense, cloud endpoints, and service infrastructure. So these are some of the listing of services under each cloud platform domain. Now let's look at Ferrero use case, and let's also understand what was done here. So Ferrero is one of the famous chocolate and ranks third among worldwide chocolate and confectionery producers. It was found in 1946 in Italy. I'm sure you would have seen the Ferrero chocolates when you would have gone out to buy some chocolates. So the challenges here was that Ferrero, as we know, is sold in every supermarket and is known for its quality. Once the business grew, some issues arose, right? And that's what happens when the business grows. You have issues popping up, which could be related to the volume of data, the speed with which the data is getting generated, the variety of data, and also looking at your platforms which support different dynamic applications or your scalability requirements, performance requirements, and so on. So it needed data storage, processing, and analysis system for a wide customer database. There was a huge gap between the company and the people who bought its goods because the company relied on data given sales outlets. Now that's one of the challenge. Ferrero wanted to create a digital ecosystem where there was a point of contact with its customers and also a foundation for an innovative data-driven marketing strategy. What was the solution here? So one of the service of cloud platforms or Google Cloud Platform is BigQuery. And this was an answer to Ferrero's challenges since it was capable of hyper-fast and efficient data analysis as a solution. Now, as I mentioned, BigQuery is a data warehouse which allows you to store structured data. Now, this could directly be used as a service where you could store in any amount of data and you would not be paying for storage. So there are different pricing models, and for data up to 1 terabytes, you would not be charged anything. And if you would be accessing the data, that is reading the data or processing the data from BigQuery, that's where the pricing model kicks in. Now, using Google Cloud's BigQuery, business analysts of Ferrero were able to store and analyze massive data sets in a very reliable, fast, and affordable manner. Consumer behavior and sales pattern data reports were easy to build and automate. And the analysis also followed Ferrero to adopt advertising across various marketing channels to serve the customer needs in a better way. What was the result? They could divide their database into real-time, actionable consumer clusters to generate more accurate user profiles. Ferrero was also able to personalize its marketing strategies to match the user needs. Now, Google Cloud Platform completely tailored the website, mobile content, and advertising, and created a very cost-effective media buy strategy. Now, these were some basics on Google Cloud. Now, as I said, you can always find a lot of details about pricing, about services, and also all the services are accessible in your free trial account. Now, let me just walk you through here. So one is you could always find details on documentation on each of these services. So if I would click on getting started, you have quick start, which basically shows you short tutorials. You have trainings and you have also certifications. Now, if we click on quick start, now that takes me to this page, which shows me quick starts, or if you would want to understand about different projects, if you would want to look into the documentation of creating a Linux virtual machine or storing a file and sharing it, deploying a container, Docker container image, and so on. So you have a lot of quick starts here. You can also look at Cloud Minute. On the same page, on the right side, you have docs. And once you click on that, it takes you to these links. Now this shows you build solutions, which shows you top use cases, best practices, all the solutions. It's always good to learn from these use cases which are available. And here you have different featured products and all the different services which Google Cloud offers. Now you can click on featured products, and that basically shows you a list of these products. Now here we have all the solutions which you can look at: architecture, database, enterprise level, big data and analysis, gaming related, Internet of Things, and so on. Now, if you go down here, it shows you featured products, and that shows you some of the important products such as Compute Engine, which is belonging to the compute domain. You have Cloud Run, you have Anthos, which is for migration and basically cloud adoption. When organizations would want to move from on-premise to cloud-based solutions, you have Vision AI, you have cloud storage. Now that basically allows you to store any kind of data, whether that's an object. So this is acting as an object storage. You have Cloud SQL, which is basically a ready-to-use service where you would be using MySQL, Postgres, or any other SQL Server database services. You have BigQuery, which is a data warehouse, which basically allows you to store your structured data. And then you have your AI and machine learning related products. So you have AutoML, Vision AI, Video AI, text to speech, speech to text, and so on. Now you also have different platform accelerators which can be used. And in any of these cases, for example, if I would click on Compute Engine, which is a featured product from Google Cloud, now that shows you basically your quick starts using your Linux machines, how-to guides, which tells you completely working on a VM instance or working on storage, working on persistent disks, and so on. And it shows you the documentation here. Now you also have products and pricing option, which you can see for GCP pricing. And you could straight away go to the pricing. You could be looking at solutions, which talks about infrastructure modernization. Now this is something which organizations are interested in when they would want to move from their on-premise solution to your Google Cloud. Now here I can say, for example, I click on infrastructure modernization. You can always find some case studies. What are the different solutions we have here, right? When you talk about Google Cloud, so you can always click on see solutions, and you can look at VM migration or SAP Cloud, right? Why Google Cloud, what it can be used for, VMware as a service, or HPC, that is high performance computing. And about these services, we will learn in detail later. Now I can go back on the same page where I was clicking on the services. So you have quick starts, you have how-to guides, you have deep understanding of different concepts, right? And here, if I click on all how-to guides, so that shows me what are the different ways in which you can work with Compute Engine and working with different instances. Although it's quite exhaustive content, but then if you follow steadily, then you can learn a lot about Google Cloud. Now here I can just go back. So this is just giving you some idea on the different products which are available from Google Cloud, looking into different sections, finding right documentation here, right? And you can always look into each one of these in detail for each product which Google Cloud offers. Now, if we scroll down, we could see all the options or all the domains which we see here, right? Let me just go back because we got into solutions. Now we have quick starts, right? And then you can basically scroll all the way down to look at Cloud SDK, which can be set up on your Windows machine, like I have set it up on my Windows machine. Plus, when you use Google Console, you have a GUI, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes, and also a Cloud Shell where you can use your command line options to work with Google Cloud Platform. You have Cloud Console, which is nothing but your GUI to access your resources. Now, you can also look at in-depth tutorials, pricing, and you have different other options. So let's just click on pricing here. And then we have your price list, which basically gives you details of different services, what are available, and what are the services or what are the prices. So for example, if I click on compute engine, right, and this shows me the pricing aspect of compute engine, which belongs to compute domain. And here you can see you have VM instance pricing, you have networking pricing, sole tenant nodes, which are specific to particular organizations, or if organizations would want to have dedicated nodes, you have GPU based pricing, right? So general processing units, you have disk and image pricing, and you can click on any of the links and you can see pricing, which also shows you your different kind of machine types. So here you have different kind of machine types, which says N1, N2, N2D, E2. You have memory optimized machine types, you have compute optimized, you have premium images, and you can basically look at all the categories. You can look at disk pricing, which involves your persistent disk pricing for SSDs or HDDs. What are the kind of images, what are the different network services, right? And you can always look at your machine types. You can choose a particular region, right? There is the concept of region and availability zones here, and as per region you could look at the prices. You can also look at standard prices. You could be looking for what are the free tier machines. If I'm specifically looking for VM instance pricing, I can click on this one, and that takes me to the VM instance pricing. What is the billing module? What is the instance uptime? What is the resource-based pricing? And then you can also look at different kind of discounts, such as sustained use discounts, committed use discounts, discounts for preemptible VM instances, and so on. And this is how you can be looking at pricing for all different resources. And you can choose the resource which you are interested in, and then look for the pricing, benchmarks, reservations if you would want to use and you would want to benefit, if you would want to look at what are the quotas and limits, and so on. So please explore this link and you can find a lot of information when it comes to technical options, looking at different Google Cloud products, which we briefly discussed when it comes to domains and what each product can be used for. You can always come back to the main page where I was showing you different services. We went into pricing straight away, right? Now you can always come back to this page on your cloud.google.com, and then you have your solutions, which talks about different products, right? And you can click on these or you can look into technical documentation. So this talks about your different featured solutions, infrastructure solutions, you have data center migration related, and so on. So I could be talking more and more about Google Cloud Platform. It's a ocean, it's a huge chunk of different services for different organizational requirements. So look into this link. And also what you can do is create a account on Gmail. I mean, you could create a free account, or you could go to cloud.google.com and then you could create a free account like I have created here, and I can just click on console. Now that's my GUI or Google Cloud Console, which basically allows me to work with Google Cloud. Now there are a lot of options here. By default, when you create an account, now in my case on the top it says it's a free trial account. I have $300 credit, and out of that $251 is left, and 237 days out of a year are left for my account. Now here I can basically see the project, right? And by default we can create a project, or by default there is a project existing for any user. So when you log in, it creates a particular project, and you could create a new project, and project would be to dedicate your different services or different resources per different project. So this is your dashboard, which basically shows your project, which shows you a project number and a project ID, which is always unique. Now you can click on this, and this, if you would want, you can hide this information. You can also look into the documentation part of it. Then it shows you the different services or a graphical information of services which you might have used in past. So you have compute engine, which shows you how much percentage of CPU was used. You can always go to compute engine as a service. You can look at your Google Cloud Platform status and look at the Google Cloud status. Now this is billing. Now since this shows me the billing period for April month, and I can always look at detailed charges. I can look at reporting. I can look at different APIs which Google offers. And for your different kind of work, you can always go to the API overview or the API link and enable or disable any API. Now, once you enable or disable any API, then you can use that. So you have news section, you have documentation, and you have getting started guides, which tells you how to work or enable different APIs. If you would want to deploy a pre-built solution, add dynamic logging, monitoring errors, deploying a Hello World app, and so on. Now, this is your dashboard. I can click on activity, and that would show me what kind of activity I would have done in my cloud platform. I can always choose the kind of activities by saying activity type. I can choose the resources. Now it shows me that I created some VM instances, I deleted them, I updated some metadata, I basically worked on instances, I changed some firewall rules here. I have then also worked on some other services or APIs. So I created some buckets, which is for object storage. And again, I have been working with some instances and creating some firewall rules. Here, I have granted some permissions. I am setting up a policy, right? So this activity gives me a history of what things I have done over the past couple of months while working on Google Cloud Platform. Now, on the top left corner, you have the hamburger menu, which you can click on this. So that's your navigation menu. And when you click on this, this shows you home. It takes you to the marketplace. It specifically takes you to billing. You can always look at APIs and services. So here in API services, I can pretty much go to a dashboard and I can see a report on the traffic or errors or latency and the kind of APIs which are available. So you have Compute Engine API, you have BigQuery API, BigQuery Data Transfer API, BigQuery Storage, Cloud Data Proc. So these are some of the APIs or services I've used in past. Might be I was evaluating a product, might be I was using a particular product. So you have, whenever you would want to use a particular service from Google Cloud Platform, you would be enabling these APIs. So here we see some APIs for data proc. You have logging, monitoring, you have resource manager API, you have cloud SQL, which allows you to directly use MySQL or Postgres, you have cloud storage, right? And so many APIs. So if I would want to enable a particular API, which is not right now required, but then it's good to know, you can always click on this one. You can search for an API. So for example, if I would say data proc, right? And that shows me the cloud data proc API, which manages Hadoop based clusters and jobs on Google Cloud Platform. So I can spin up a Hadoop cluster and I can start running some jobs on a Hadoop cluster on demand. And as I'm done with it, I can just get rid of it. So this is an API which I would have to enable. And then for every particular service, you also have an admin API, which you would enable. Now, going back, so coming out from this API library, I got into API and services. Now there is, you can look into the library, you can look at credentials, and you can also look at different time intervals for which you can see the usage of your different APIs. Now, going back to the menu, you have support, wherein you can always reach out to the Google support team if you are using a paid version. Even with free trial, you can try to reach out and you will find someone to help, but it is always good when you have a billing cycle reaching out the customer care. You have identity access management and admin, and this is required when you're working with different APIs or services, when you would want to have relevant access. You have getting started, you have security related options, you have Anthos, which is mainly for migration. Now here you can look at your different domains, such as which we discussed. So you have compute, and in compute you have different services. So you have App Engine, you have Compute Engine, Kubernetes, you have Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. You can look into the storage aspect, which shows you Bigtable, which is usually and mainly for your unstructured data. Bigtable, which is something which gave rise to popular NoSQL databases like HBase and Cassandra. You have Data Store, which can be used. You have Firestore, File Store, Storage, which can be used to put in data of any kinds. You have SQL for structured data. You have Spanner as a service. You have memory store, and you have data transfer. Now, when it comes to the networking domain, you have all these services such as VPC, virtual private network, network related services for your load balancing, for using a cloud-based DNS or cloud-defined network. You have hybrid connectivity, network service tiers, security, and intelligence. Then you have other options for your operations which can be used. And here you have different other tools which can be used, such as Cloud Build. You have Cloud Tasks, Container Registry, Deployment Manager, and many more. Big data specific, you have the services here. So you have Dataproc, which can be used to spin up your clusters. You have publish subscribe messaging systems such as now Kafka, which you might have heard of, originates its idea from here. So PubSub, you have Dataflow, you have IoT Core, BigQuery, which is a data warehouse package or data warehousing solution from Google Cloud. Now, then you have your artificial intelligence related services and other Google solutions. So you can always find a huge list of services, or you can say at high level solutions offered by Google Cloud. And we can use these to basically test some of the solutions, use them, and work on them. So I'll give you a quick demo on different services which can be used here from your Google Cloud platform. Now, this is your Google Cloud platform, and this is your console. Now, this also gives you a Cloud Shell which can be activated so that you can work from command line. And you can always find a lot of documentation on that. So you can also set up your Cloud Shell, that is SDK, on your Windows machine. And if you have set it up, then basically you could be doing something like gcloud, right? If the cloud has been set up. So in my case, I had set up the Cloud SDK, and basically I can get into that by looking at what path I have set up. So Cloud SDK, and then I can be using it from my Windows machine as per my comfort. I can also activate the Cloud Shell here, which will basically open up a terminal. And at any point of time, you can open up this one Cloud Shell in a different window. It is preparing the Cloud Shell, where it will by default set up your project. It will set up the metadata. And now I am logged into my Google Cloud account from command line, and here I can basically use gcloud, right? And that basically shows you the different options which are available, which you can be using. So if you would want to use a particular service, you can also try giving a help, and that shows you how do you manage your Google Cloud platform, right? So you have different options for billing, to work with your different services, and basically you could be working on Google Cloud using this Cloud Shell from your command line. Usually for people who are learning Google Cloud in the beginning, it is always good to go for console and use your different services from here in an easier way. But as I said, you can always use the command line. For example, if I would just go ahead and type gcloud create instances, and that will directly take me to the Cloud Console documentation, which shows you different options which you can use to work with instances. So I could do a gcloud compute instances create, and then I can give my instance name and so on. And I'll show you some examples on that. So you can be using your Cloud Console, right? That is your Cloud Shell, and you can straight away start working from command line. However, I would suggest using console in the beginning, and when you are well experienced, then you can start using Cloud Shell to do things from command line. And when you are fully experienced, you can always switch, and certain things are usually useful or easier when done from command line, and some are easier when you do it from the console. And you can use any one of these options. Now we can go to Google Cloud Console. Now, as of now, I can close this one. I still have my Cloud Shell open. If I would want to look into it, I can click on this one, and I can straight away go to Compute Engine, where I would want to work on creating some instances on Google Cloud Platform using the Compute Engine service, and then basically connecting to those instances and basically trying out some basic things. So you can click on VM instances, And then once this comes up, I can always create some instances. Now, if you see here, I have some instances already created, right? And I can continue working on those. I can create new instances. I can use different options while creating instances, and I'll show you that in a demo in quick seconds. So let's have a quick demo on setting up GCP instances. Now, before that, let's have a quick recap. So when you talk about instance or a virtual machine, it is hosted on Google's infrastructure, right? And you can create your Google Cloud instance using this Google Cloud Console. That is by clicking on this and then going to Compute Engine and clicking on VM instances. Now, you can also do that from Google Cloud command line tool, that is Cloud Shell, and you can be doing that using Compute Engine API. So Compute Engine instances can run the public images for Linux or Windows servers that Google provides. You also have option of creating or using custom images that you can create and import from your existing systems. You can deploy Docker containers which are automatically launched on instance running containers, optimized OS. Now, when you talk about instances and projects, always remember that in each instance belongs to a Google Cloud Console project, and a project can have one or more instances. When you talk about instances and storage options, each instance has a small boot persistent disk, which I will show you in further screens, that contains the OS. You can add more storage space if needed. And when you talk about instances and network, a project can have up to 5 VPC networks. So VPC network is virtual private networks, wherein you can virtual private cloud networks, where you can have your resources within your own subnet. And each instance belongs to one VPC network. Now, instances in same network can communicate with each other through local area network protocol. An instance uses internet to communicate within any machine. So that could be virtual, physical, or outside its own network. When you talk about instances and containers, you should remember that Compute Engine instances support a declarative method for launching your application using containers. Now, you can create a VM instance or a VM instance template. You can provide a Docker image and launch the configuration. So there are different ways in which you can create these instances. And once you create these instances, you can say, for example, you're creating a Linux instance. You can associate SSH keys with your Google account or your G Suite account, and then manage your admin, non-admin access to the instance using IAM roles. If you connect to your instance using G Cloud or SSH from console, which we will see later, Compute Engine can generate SSH keys for you and apply that to your Google Cloud or G Suite account. Now, what we can do is we can see how we can create your Google Cloud instances from your console or from the command line. Let's have a look in creating instances using GCP console. Now that we have learned on some basics of Google Cloud Platform, what are the different services, what are different domains, basically looking at your Google Cloud Console or even Cloud Shell. Let's go ahead and create some VM instances. Now that's from your Compute Engine service. And let's try connecting to these instances and see how this works. Let's also see what are the different options which are available when you would want to create the virtual machine instances here. So when you click on your drop down from the top left and choose Compute Engine, so it brings you to this page. So I can show that again. So you can click on Compute Engine, click on VM instances, and that basically brings you to this page. Now here it tells you Compute Engine lets you use virtual machines that run on Google's infrastructure. So we can create micro VMs or large instances running different distributions of Linux or Windows using standard images, that is public images, and you can also have your own image. So let's create a VM instance by clicking on create. Now that's basically helping me to create an instance here. So it shows me the instance name. I can give it something. So let me say C1. Now I can add labels. So what is label? It basically allows you to organize your project, add arbitrary labels as key value pairs to your resources. This is basically categorizing your labels in projects if you have multiple projects. Now remember, if you have your Cloud Console and if you have created your free trial account, it will allow you to do these things. If not, you may have to go back to the billing section and see if the billing is enabled. Which also means that when you are creating your Google Cloud account, it will ask you to key in your credit card details, but they do not charge anything, or they might be $1 or 1 rupee depending on your location, and that's also refunded, but that's just to verify your card. Now, once I've given the name, I can choose a region. So I would basically choose Europe. Since I'm in Europe, I would be clicking on Europe West 3, and here I can choose an availability zone. Availability zone is basically to make your services or instances or any other resources highly available. So you can choose one of the availability zones. Now I would choose say West 3. Now this one, we can scroll down and here it says machine configurations. You have general purpose machines, you have memory optimized machines, which is M1 series, and you can always go back to the Google Cloud page and see what a particular kind of machine specializes in. So I would click on general purpose, and in general purpose you have different categories. So you have N1, which is powered by Intel Skylake CPU platform, or you have E2, which is CPU platform selection based on availability. So let's have N1 selected. Now this one shows me the machine type, and if you are using your free tier account, then you can start with correcting a micro machine, which is one virtual CPU core. You can go for a G1 small, which is one virtual CPU core and 1.7 GB RAM. You can even go up to a high-end machine, and then you can basically see if you're using a free account, how many of these machines you can use. If I would be selecting 8 virtual CPU cores and 32 gigabyte of memory, then it would allow me to create at least 2 instances by this configuration. We will use N1 standard, which is 1 virtual CPU core, 3.75 GB memory. Now, then we can also deploy a container image to this VM instance. If you would be interested in deploying a container image, let's not get into that right now. Here it shows you the boot disk and it shows you Debian GNU 9 Linux 9. What I would do is I can go for this distribution, or I can choose a Linux distribution of my choice. So here you have public images, you have custom images, you also have snapshots if you have created backup of your previous images. Here I can choose, for example, Ubuntu, and then I can choose a particular version. So let's go for Ubuntu 18.04. You can go for the latest one also. 18.04 would be good enough. And here it tells me what is a boot disk. So you have SSDs or you have standard persistent disks. Now SSDs are little expensive in comparison to your standard persistent disks or your SSDs, but then SSDs are faster. So as of now, we can choose standard persistent disk as it is, and we can let the gigabyte be 10. Now, depending on your requirement, you can increase this. You can even add disks later. That's not a problem. Click on select. Now here I have access scopes. So here I will say allow default access. You can also set access for each API, or you can give full access to all cloud APIs. So that based on your requirement, you can anytime change later also. We will also say allow HTTP traffic, and we can also choose allow HTTPS traffic. That basically allows me to access this machine or services which are HTTP based accessible from this machine. Now I can just click on create. However, it would be good to basically enable connectivity to this machine. Now we can do that in different ways. One is when you bring up your machine, it will have an SSH access, which you can log in from the cloud platform here itself. Or what you can do is you can create a private and a public key using some softwares like Putty or PuttyGen. So for example, if you do not have that on your machine, you can just type in download Putty. That takes you to the putty.org page, and here you can click on download Putty and scroll down, which shows you for your 64-bit machine which I have in my case, you can download putty.exe, which is basically your SSH and Telnet client to connect to your machines. You can also use putty.gen, which will be allowing you to create a private and a public key, which I have done in my case. Let me show you how. So what you can do is you can go to putty.gen to begin with, and here you can click on generate. Now then, to have this key generated, just move your cursor on the top here in the empty space, and that creates your key. You can give it a name. So for example, let's give a username. I would give HDU. Now I can give a password for this one, so let me give a simple password. And what I can also do is I can copy this public key from here, and for my later usage, I can just keep it in my notepad file, which I can use later, and I'll show you when. So now we can save this private key, and this will basically allow me to save my private key. I can choose desktop and I can give it a name. So let's say new key, and that will be getting saved in a .ppk file. So let's save it, and that's done. So we also have our public key and we have saved our private key. Now we know that when you would want to connect using SSH, you need your private keys to the client, and public key also has to be existing. So let's take this public key. So let's do a Control A. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come back to my Google Cloud Console, and here you can click on security. So you can click on the security tab here, scroll down, and just give your public key. Once you give that, it resolves and shows you the name, and this is good enough so that I can use my SSH client to connect to this machine. I can click on create, and this will basically create my VM instance. It will take some time, and then your instance will have an internal IP which will show up here, external IP, and it will also show you options to connect to these machines. So this is my internal IP, this is my external IP, which I can use to connect from a client. I can easily connect from the option here which says SSH, and I can say open in a browser window. I can even open this in a custom port. I can look at the gcloud command, which you can give from Cloud Shell, or you can use another SSH. So let's first do a open in browser window, and let's see if this connects. So we can easily connect to our instance, the Ubuntu 18 instance, which I just set up here easily in a couple of seconds. Now this is trying to establish a connection using your SSH keys. And when you do that, it also basically brings up this web browser. So I'm already connected. It shows my username, which is my cloud account username, and I have been connected to this machine here using SSH. It did not ask me for any password, and basically now I can just check what do I have in my Linux file system, right? And I can anytime log in as root by doing a sudo su. For example, let's try installing a package, and I can say apt-get install vim, or apt-get install wget, or apt-get install open SSH, and all these packages are already existing, so not an issue. Now I can start using this instance. I can just look at the disk, what is available. Okay, now we gave around 10 gigabyte, out of which we see 8.3 gigabyte here for the dev SDA1, and then 1.8 gigabyte available. And you can continue using this machine. This was the easiest way of connecting to a VM instance using SSH. Now what we can also do is I can just leave this, and I will now try to connect using an external SSH client, right? And here you can copy the public IP. So when you want to connect to an instance, you will have to get the public IP. Also remember that if you select and stop this machine, which will stop your billing counter, and if you start it again, the internal IP will remain same, but the external IP is the one which will change. I can obviously select this machine anytime, and I can do a cleanup and I can delete it. I can do a start of the machine if it is stopped, and I can even import the virtual machine to be used later. So there are different options which you can always use. So this is my instance, and if you would want to look at the details, click on this one, C1, and that should basically allow you to look at the details. So it shows you what is the instance ID, what is the machine type, is it reservation specific, what is the CPU platform, what's the zone, and all the other details. At any point of time, if you would want to edit, you can always click on edit and you can change the details as you need. Now, you can also look at the equivalent REST command to basically use the REST API to connect to this instance. For now, I have copied the public IP and I would want to connect it using PuTTY. So let's go in here and let's give it the host name. So I can give Ubuntu, I can give my IP address. So that's in my session. Now I will click on SSH. I would go into authentication. I'll click on browse, and this is where I need to choose the PPK file. So this is the one which we created, new key. Let's select this, and then I can come back to session. I can even save this and I can call it as my instance one. Let's save it, and you can create any number of instances. So you see, I have created different instances here for my Google Cloud or Amazon related instances, and I can click on open. It says the server's host key is not cached in the registry. That's fine. Just click on yes. And basically it says no authentication method supported. Now this could be because we have not enabled your SSH access. So let's look at that. So now let's see if we were trying to connect using PuTTY, what was the issue here? So if I go back to my PuTTY, select my instance, load it, it says port 22. I'm giving the username, which is Ubuntu, or sorry, that's the wrong username we gave, and that might be the reason. We had set up the user as SDU. So let's save this again, and now let's try connecting to this one, and it asks for my password, and you are able to connect this. Right now, if there was any other issue related to network connectivity, then we could look at the rules, the inbound and outbound rules, which allow us to look into the machine. Now we are connected to our machine here using HDU user. I can log in as root and I can continue working. So not only from the SSH within the cloud console, but you can use an external SSH client and connect to your machine. So this is your Ubuntu machine, and we can basically look at the space, and that basically confirms we are connecting to the same machine, which shows 8.3 gigabytes here and 1.8 gigabytes here, which we were seeing from the SSH in the browser. Now let's close this and let's go back to our instance page. Now here you can always look at the network details, and this will show you your different kind of rules, that is ingress or egress rules, which basically allows to connect to this machine from an external network, or for this machine to connect to an external network. So here we have different firewall rules, which shows default allow HTTP, that's your ingress rule, and it tells you apply to all. It shows me what are the IP ranges where I can specifically give the IP of my machine. It shows the protocols. It shows what are the different ports which you have used for these services. For example, RDP or SSH, which shows 22. You have ICMP, HTTP, and HTTPS. Now, anytime if you would want to make a change to these rules, that can be done by going into your network details, and say for example you would want to work on firewall rules. So we have these firewall rules here. You can click on this one. So right now we are looking into the network domain and we are looking into VPC network, right? And this shows me what are the different rules we have. Now if I would want to create a different firewall rule for a different protocol, I can always click on create firewall rule. I can give it a name. Okay, I can say what if you would want to turn all the firewall logs. You can basically say what is the kind of traffic. So ingress applies to incoming traffic and egress applies to outgoing traffic, and you can then basically choose what are the IP ranges from where you want that connection to be coming in or to going out. You can choose a particular protocol. You can give a protocol here with comma separated values, and you can create a firewall rule. So this might be required depending on the services which you are running, wherein you might want to enable your access to your machine from an external service or to an external service. So you can always go to network details. From here, you can then go into firewall rules, create a firewall rule, apply that to your instance and restart your instance. So as of now, we don't need to create any network details here because my ingress or egress rules are already available. Right now, I can basically then have my instance stopped and removed. So I can just do a stop, or since this is running, the ideal way would be to do a stop. I could also do a reset. Now, what does reset do? Reset does not basically delete the machine. What it does is it does a cleanup of the machine and it brings it to the initial state. So sometimes we might have installed certain things on our machine. We would want to clean them up, and at that time, reset can be useful. I can basically click on delete, right? And I can select this and I can do a cleanup. And this is good always when you are using a free trial account. Try to use different services, play around with them, and then you can clean up so that you do not waste your free billing credit, right? And you can use it for meaningful stuff. Now I have clicked on delete, and within few seconds my instance which I had created will be deleted. Also to remember is if you are creating multiple instances, then you can connect from one machine to other machine using SSH by using the private file. So for that we can learn in detail later. So this is just a simple example of using your compute engine, creating your instances, connecting to it from an internal SSH or from an external SSH client such as PuTTY, where you have already created your private and public keys. Now I can click on the browser here, and then I can basically come out and I can basically be looking into any particular service. So we just looked into compute engine, right? You have different other options. You have instance groups, you have instance templates. For example, let's click on instance templates here. And that basically shows you that you don't have any instance template. And this basically facilitates, say for example, you are working as an admin and you would want to create an instance template so that using that, you can describe a VM instance and then you can basically use this template to create different instances. You can go for sole tenant nodes. You can look for machine images. You can also look at your disks. You can create a snapshots and you can look at different options here. Now let's come back here and let's click on home, and that should take you back to your home page, which basically shows you if a particular API which you have used recently, which shows me in the graph here. So I can go to the API's overview, right? And that basically shows me if there were any errors, if I was using the compute engine API to basically create a VM instance, and that's why we were seeing some spike in the graph. So this is a quick demo of using your compute engine service provided by Google Cloud, wherein you can create VM instances and use those VM instances for your application installation, for any other purpose. Now that we have seen how you use your Cloud Console to create an instance and also clean it up, let's also understand how you can do using your command line options, and let's see what it takes or what are the different commands which you can use to create your instances. Now you can always, when you're creating an instance, you can use compute engine which provisions resources to start the instance. So instance basically has different states which we can see when we are creating the instance. So you basically start the instance moves into staging, that is prepared for your first boot. Finally, it boots up and then it moves into running. So when you look at instance states, which we will create instance and see, it will basically have different states such as provisioning, where resources are being allocated for instance, but instance is not yet running. Then it goes into staging, where resources have been acquired and instance is being prepared for your first boot. Then instance is booting up and running, and if you are stopping an instance, it goes into being stop status and it would be moved to the terminated option. You can also do a repairing of instance, and finally you can terminate your instance or clean it up by stopping and then deleting it. Now, when you say stopping and resetting an instance, you can stop the instance as I showed earlier if you no longer need it. But if you need for future use, you can just use the reset option, which will basically wipe the contents of instance or any application state. And then finally, you can stop it and have it terminated. Now, when you would want to do that using your Cloud Console, we have seen the options. Now, let's also see from the command line tool how you can do it. So here I have the Cloud Shell, which I brought up from here, and I basically opened it in a new window. So command line tool enables you to easily manage your compute engine resources in a friendlier format than using your compute engine API. Now, gcloud, which is part of Cloud SDK, is the main command here, and then you can always autocomplete the different options here. So when you would want to create or work on gcloud, you can just type in gcloud here, and then for example I could just say help to see different options of gcloud, which will show me different options which you can use here. Now we would be interested in compute instances, so I could also do a gcloud compute instances, and then I can basically say create, and then I can do a help. Now that should show me different options which work with gcloud compute instances create command, which is expecting an instance name. So your Google Cloud SDK, which we can set up on our Windows machine or even on your Linux machine, is set of tools that helps you to manage resources and applications hosted on your GCP, that is your Google Cloud Platform. Now here you have options such as gcloud, which I'm showing you right now. You have gsutil, and then you have bq, so that also can be used. So you can set up a Google Cloud Compute if using gcloud. Now what we can do is, if we are setting up our SDK on our Windows machine, then we would have to do a gcloud init, which basically initializes your configurations for gcloud. Now here we are using a Cloud Shell which was started from the console, and we don't have to basically give your gcloud init command because it's already initialized. Now you can always look at your default zone, you can look at your region, what is being used. All those things are coming from the metadata which is being used. So for example, I could be looking at the metadata for my particular project by just doing a gcloud, and then I can say compute, and I would be interested in project info, so I can just do a project minus info, and then I can do a describe, and then I need my project ID, so I can say minus minus project, and I can get my project ID from here. So you can click on this one, and that's my project ID. So I can click on this one, and here I can just do a right click, and if it does not paste, then you can do a control V, and then I can try to look at my project info. So this basically will give me the metadata which is by default set, and we can always look at what are the regions or what is the zone which has been set. So if it has been set, so I'm looking at my details, it is showing me my SSH keys, and then it can be using your default region and your default available zones. It also shows my username and other details. So this is basically to look at the metadata which is available. Now at any point of time, I can basically say add metadata. I can basically choose metadata option, and I can say my default region should be Europe, which I was choosing earlier. So I can just bring up this command again, and what I can do is I can say here where I have gcloud compute project info, where I did a describe earlier. Now what I can also do is I can just say add metadata, and then I can specify what is the metadata I would be interested in adding. I can then say Google compute default region, and then I can basically give a region, for example Europe, and then I can say West 3, And if you are not well experienced, you can always do it from console, or you can be doing it from here. So I'm giving Google Compute default region. Then I can also give a Google Compute default zone, and then I can pass in a value for default zone. So I can say Europe West 3, and then basically I can give an availability zone. So if it is basically giving me some error where I'm trying to pass in these values, so I can just give it this way, and then it basically says that if you can look into particular help to see what is the command which you would have to do. Now I can basically do a G cloud init here, initial configuration, and this basically says that it is initializing my default configuration. It says reinitialize this configuration from Cloud Shell. You want to create a new configuration. So if I had updated my metadata, then basically I could just do a cloud init, and I could be reinitializing my default configuration or properties which I have passed in. So as of now, I will not activate or change the default region. Let's go for a simple way in which you can create your compute engine. So for example, I'll just say 1, and it is reinitializing. It asks me what is the username, and let's select that. It says what is the project, and let's select that. And do you want to configure a default compute region and zone, right? And I will just say yes. And basically then it shows me different options which we have here. So there are too many options here. And then here we were interested in Europe West 3. So let's choose 21, right? And then that basically allows me to choose my region and my zone. So it also gives you some specifications. So it says your project default compute zone has been set to Europe West 3A. You can change it by running gcloud config set, and you can give a compute zone, right? So I can always give these commands. I can get help information here. So I can just say gcloud config set, and I can be specifying the compute zone. So I can say compute slash zone, and I can give a zone. I can say compute slash region, and I can give a region name if I would want to do it. Or the easier way is like what I did right now. So you can basically do a command gcloud init, and then basically it allows you to change your configuration or set default things here. You can all the times you can say gcloud config unset to basically remove a compute zone or a compute region. Now there are different ways. So if you were working on a Linux machine, you could always use an export command, something like this. So you could do a export cloud SDK, and then you can say compute underscore zone, and then give your zone name, or compute underscore region and give your region, or you could add it in your bash rc file, right? Now that is when you have your cloud SDK set up on your Linux machine or on Windows machine, and you would want to specifically set a zone and a region for all your compute related resources. So we don't need to do that. The default settings are already given here, right? And what we can do is we can start by quickly looking into gcloud compute instances options. So I can say gcloud compute instances, and then I can just do a list. At any point of time, if you would need help, you can just do a gcloud compute and then say minus minus help, or I could just do a gcloud compute, and that shows me different options which I have here, from which I use instances. I can always type instances and again hit enter, and it shows me different options what you would want to do. So I can initially just type list, which should show me what are the lists or what are the instances available. And as of now, we don't have any instances. I can always do a list, and then I can specify minus minus format, and then try to get the information in a JSON format or YAML or minus minus format text. So you can always do a list, you can do a filter. So there are different options with your list. And you can try doing a help here, and that basically shows you what are the options. So for example, if I do a help and it shows me with list what are the things you can do. So you can give a name, you can give a regular expression, you can say in particular zone, you can use a minus filter. So there are different commands which are available, and you can always find all those options here as I showed you earlier. So now what we would be interested in is basically going for your compute instances. I can always do a SSH and I can create an instance. I can add and remove metadata, right, for my instances by giving a particular zone, by giving a particular region, and if you would want to do that. Now here what we can do is we can basically create an instance by just giving a name to that particular instance, and we can then go back to our console and see what has it done. So I can say here create, so that's an option. Let's see what does the create do. So it says okay, you are giving a create option, but you would have to give a name. So let's say, let's call it E1, and that will be the name of my instance. And this one is an easy command from your Cloud Shell, which basically creates an instance. You see the zone which has been set. It is the standard machine type. It is not preemptible. It has an internal IP and it has an external IP. Now I have created an instance, and here I can just go back and then I can just do a refresh on this page, and that already shows me the instance which I've created. And then you can use the same method to connect to it using an SSH. So I have an instance created from my Cloud Shell, and what I can do is I can basically look into instances and see what are the different options with instance. So if we did a create, right, you have an option delete. We did a create, you have an option delete. You can be then deleting the instance from the command line, or you can use other options. So you can do a list, you can do a stop, you can start. So I can basically do a stop, and let's say even let's go ahead and do a stop. Commands are pretty easy here to remember, or you can always use the help option. And now I'm trying to stop the instance, and then basically I can go ahead and delete it. So this is a simple way where I created a instance from the command line or from the console which I showed earlier. And similarly, you can be working with other options. So now I've created stop the instance. Let's do a listing to see if my instance shows up. It shows up, right? And it says the status is terminated. So you have stopped it. It's in the terminated status. And now what I can do is I can go ahead and delete it. So it says this will be lost. Are you sure you would want to continue? Just say yes, and that should take care of deleting your instance. So this is a quick demo on creating your instance. We have already seen how you can connect to these instances using SSH. Now that we have created instances, let's also see how to use Google Cloud's storage service, which can be used to load data or upload data. So for this, we will have to look into your Google Cloud storage options. And here you can look in cloud storage. So let's go back here on the top, which shows me different services which we have here. And let's look into storage. So this one shows me your storage option. Now you can click on browser, and that basically shows me your storage browser, which shows me on the top you have options for creating a bucket. Now Google Cloud Storage allows you to store any kind of data here. The easiest and the simplest way would be by using Cloud Console, although you can again use Cloud Shell, and in that you can use your gsutil command. And gsutil basically has different options where you can be using, say for example, I would want to work on buckets. So I can be using MB, and then I can use my command line option to create buckets. I can put in data there, I can browse it, and I can access the data from command line. So let's create a bucket here. Let's click on this. Let's give it a name. So let's say my data important. That's the name. Now I can click on continue straight away. I can look into all of these options if I'm interested in. So you can basically be looking at your monthly cost estimate in the beginning. Now I can click on continue, or you can say choose where to store your data. And this one shows you different options. So you have region specific. So let's also give the bucket name with all lowercase. That's what is required. Yeah. So coming back to the location type, you can choose multi-region, which basically allows high availability. So your bucket or your storage option will be accessible across regions. You can also give dual region and high availability and low latency across two regions. I can also say region specific. So for our use case, we can just give region specific, which can keep our cost low. But in business use cases, you would be going for multi-region. Now here you have location, and I would again go for say Europe, and let's choose Europe West 3 Frankfurt. It is always a good practice that when you create your instances, when you create your storage, or you use different services, try to have a geographical region chosen, and then you would try to put things or your services within the particular region, within a particular zone, unless you would want to make it accessible and available across regions. Now, I can then choose a default storage class. So when you say default storage class, there are different storage class and each one is for a different use case. So you have standard, which is best for short-term storage and frequently accessed data. You have nearline. So this is basically best for backups and data access less than once a month. You can also have cold line. So these are basically like your cold storage or freezing storage, which you might have heard generically as terms. So you can choose one of these storage classes depending on what will be the use case for this particular storage bucket. So let it be standard. Now how to control access to objects. So you can basically say specify access to individual objects by using object level permissions. Now you can give permissions to the bucket. You can just say uniform access to all objects in the bucket by using only bucket level permissions. So you can choose that. You can also go into advanced settings, and here you can see different ways in which you can have configuration set up. Now you can also have a retention policy to specify the minimum duration where that this bucket's object must be protected from deletion, and you can set a retention policy. We'll not get into all that. We will just first try creating a bucket. So just click on create, and that should create your bucket wherein I have my bucket. Now I can click on overview to see the details. What is the region, which region it belongs, what is the storage class. Anytime you can always click on edit bucket and make some changes here. You can look at the permissions. So bucket uses fine-grained access, allowing you to specify access to individual objects. And then you can basically look at who has access to this. So in my case, editors of the project, they basically are the bucket owners, owners of project, viewers of the project, right? And you can basically choose what kind of access you need. So for this, you can always go into cloud storage, and then you can decide what kind of access you would want to give, whether that's a storage admin, it's an object admin, object creator, object viewer, and so on. You can always look at storage legacy, and for any other services, depending on what APIs you have enabled, right? You can always control your permissions. So right now it is storage legacy bucket reader, and that's fine. And this one is bucket owner. And then might be I was using some other services like data proc, which uses cloud storage. And that's why I've given data proc service agent also. So these are some of the members you can remove. You can view by specific members. You can view by roles. So what are the different roles which have access to this? So it says storage legacy bucket owner. There are two owners based on this particular project. So these are auto controlled, but then you can add or remove machines. You can save storage cost by adding a lifecycle rule to delete objects after the duration of current retention policy. So you can add different policies and you can basically control your bucket. Now my bucket is already created, right? So I can go back and then I see my bucket is already here, I can click on this option and you can anytime edit the bucket permissions, you can edit the labels, the default storage class, you can just go ahead and delete the bucket, you can export it to Cloud Pub Sub. So basically, if you would want to have the content from this bucket being accessible in a message queuing system, you can go for Pub Sub. You can process with Cloud Functions and you can scan with Cloud Data Loss Prevention. So there are different options which are available. We can always select this bucket and delete it. Now I can click on the bucket and that basically shows me different ways in which I can upload some data here. So I can just click on upload files, and here then I can choose some files. So for example, I'll go in here, I'll go into data sets, and I have different data sets. So for example, let's choose this one, which is a CSV file, and then I'm just uploading this to my cloud storage, right? It's as simple as this. So you can drag and drop your files, or you can just upload your files, and my file is uploaded here. Now I can basically edit permissions for this one, right? So this is in the bucket. So anyone who has access to this bucket can basically download this file. They can copy, move, or rename this. You can export it and you can look at the permissions of this file. So let's look at edit permissions, and it says for this project, whoever is the owner, it has access. I've also given a specific user my Gmail ID and I've given access. So at any point of time, you can just say add item and then you can start giving different kind of accesses. So let's click on cancel here. Now my data is already uploaded into this particular bucket, and that's a simple usage of your cloud storage. Now what we can also do is I can basically select this and I can delete it. I can also create specific folders and then basically load data into it. I can click on this one. I can just do a download and then I can download it anywhere on my machine. So let's go to desktop and let's download this file. So we not only uploaded some content in the bucket, but we also downloaded that in a different location, which will be accessible. Now, what I could have also done is I could have created a folder here and I could have specified, say, for example, immediate data. Okay. And I'm clicking on this one. So that's my immediate data. I can click on this one. And now I can upload my data specifically to this particular folder. By using the same mechanism, you can just do upload file. Let's choose air passengers. Let's do a open and my file will be uploaded. So you can always choose what is the retention expiry date for this one. So as of now, there is nothing, right? But you can be deleted. Objects can be deleted or modified until they reach their minimum duration. You can control all of that. You can basically download it, right? You can copy it and you can move it and rename it. So this is a simple example where I created a particular bucket, right? Now, if for example, you click on this transfer, so it says cloud storage data transfer products have moved. You can now find storage transfer service, on-premise data and transfer appliance in new data transfer section, right? So you can always go back to cloud storage. You can also look at transfer options, which are mainly when you are using an on-premise service and you would want to upload data in a Google Cloud, right? So this is my bucket here. Now I can go to Cloud Console, and here what I can do is, if I would be interested in working, so I can just say gsutil, right? And then we have, for example, let's try a help, okay? And that basically shows me my gsutil. Now you can always go to quick start gsutil tool, and this is one more way wherein basically you can do it from the command line. So working with buckets, so you can do a gsutil mb -b and then on a particular zone if you would be interested in, and then you can say gs colon and give a name. So my awesome bucket, this is how you will create a bucket, which will show you it is creating a bucket. And then basically you can upload an image or some data from internet. You can just do a wget, download the file, and then you can just do a gsutil copy command, and that basically will pick up the file from your cloud shell location, put it in your bucket. Once you have done that, you can always do a copy, right? So here you are doing a copy from your local machine, that is your Cloud Shell machine, to your bucket, and you can do the reverse of that. That is, you can do a copy and you can point your bucket and the file and download it to your desktops. So you can just download that using the command line, and you can copy the object to a folder in the bucket. So that is by creating a particular folder, and you're pushing the file into a particular bucket. You can list the contents of a bucket using ls and then give your bucket name. So gs colon. So we can just try this one to be simple, and rest you guys can try. So here you can just do a gs util, you can do a ls gs colon slash slash, and then I need to give my bucket name. So in my case, the bucket name was my data important. So let's try that. So let's say my data important, and I'm trying to list the bucket and the content it has, right? And then you have a folder, and then you can look into the folder and look into the files. So this is a simple, quick option wherein you can use your Cloud Shell. You could be using your Google Cloud SDK from your local machine, or you can be using Cloud Console to create a bucket, upload some data on it, download the data, see if the data is accessible, and that basically shows you the power of cloud storage, where you can easily upload any kind of data. Now, what we can also do is, as you're using a free account or even a paid account, unless and until you would want to keep the bucket, you can select it and you can just go ahead and delete it. So this will basically ask you to key in the bucket name, and let's say my data important. You need to confirm your bucket name, click on confirm, and you could have done that using gs util and a delete command from the command line, that is from Cloud Shell. So we have now created a bucket. We have uploaded some data into it. We saw how you can download it or create a folder and upload some specific data into it. And also you can do the same thing using gs util tools, wherein you can list your bucket, create your buckets, delete it, create some folders into it, and do everything from the command line. So this is, in simple way, you can use your GCP, where either you can spin up your machines or you can use cloud storage to basically use a storage or a easy to use instance on Google Cloud Platform. Thank you and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.